Hi, welcome back to the breadboard. So you have your nice shiny new Phoenix Contact AXC F 2152 controller, or the PLCnext Technology Starter Kit. It just arrived, you've plugged it in, you've powered it up. Now what? So in this video we're going to have a look at what to do next to get it up to the latest firmware and do some of the initial settings so that it is ready to start giving it a program of sorts. We won't do anything more than that. We'll just go look through the software, look through the settings for the networking, etc., and the passwords. We'll go in and update the firmware, because one of the things I noticed, and we'll go through this, is that it does need to be updated. And there are several versions, at least from the one I got, which I did get an early release, so that might, you will probably get one with later firmware. Does need updating to the latest, and there's no point in starting anything unless you're running on the latest firmware, released firmware, that is. So let's get started. Let's first of all go and connect to the PLC 2152. We'll use the built-in web interface that's there and see what we've got on a freshly powered up, fresh out of the box 2152 controller. So by default, these controllers at the moment are coming with their IP address set to 192.168.1.10. If you navigate to that, which I'm just about to do right here, we will get the welcome screen. So it's not HTTPS, so depending on your browser, you might get some complaint. And we get the default web page that is hosted by the PLC. You can see there's not much RAM being used, not much CPU, a little bit of a status up here. I've got English as my language. You can see you can change it easily to German if you want. I'm using English. And you can go into Community Link, PLCnext. So these are two online web areas for the PLCnext. You've got easy configuration and you've got PLCnext control, a little bit of blurb. So what we want is easy configuration. So we'll just click on there. Now you've got to log in. Now on the PLC there is, if I just find a picture for you, so on the controller you do get a password that is printed on the top of the controller. Now obviously recommendation is to change this, as anybody that can physically see the controller could get access to it and change things. So this is the default either after a factory reset or when you first get the unit. So this is not my one, this is just one of the online pictures, but we need to put that in, and the default user for this is also admin, ADMIN. So we will log in, ADMIN, and the password in my case, I'm not going to tell you, not that it matters. These passwords are not easy to remember either. So if you want one that's easier to remember from a development perspective, then obviously you would want to change it as well. These are all numeric or hexadecimal kind of passwords from what I've seen, and they're 8 digits long or 8 characters long. Okay, so I've logged in and here is my logged in home screen. So for general information we just click here. This tells you a little bit about the current controller, so Phoenix Contact Germany, their address, the website, the controller type that we're connected to, so AXC F 2152, the serial number, firmware version. So you can see here the firmware is 1.0.0 and the hardware is hardware revision 2. You need to know both of those things. And the FPGA, we've already discussed in the first video that this core of the controller is a Cyclone 5 FPGA chip running a dual core processor in it, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so the firmware version here is 1.0.0, as I said. And if we look on the website, okay, right here, this is Phoenix Contact online portal. And what I did was I went into the link for the, let me just go back a bit so you can see, for the software for the 2152, and then just went to downloads and then on to the firmware. So firmware downloads, and you can see here we go down, and the firmwares that are available for download is 1.01, 1.02, and 1.1. So the one that's in our controller right now is 1.0.0. So it's not even one of the ones that's listed here. So we really do want to update it. I've already downloaded 1.1. You just click on the link and download it like pretty much any other download from the internet. You don't really have to do any logging in. As you can see, I'm not logged in or anything here. You can download the earlier versions, but not the one that I have currently installed in my controller. So I've downloaded that. I want to now flash the firmware. So let's go and see what we need to do to flash the firmware. So there is a link on the community page that tells you the process to go through for updating the firmware. You have to first of all download the firmware zip file, which we've already done, or I've already done, and unzip it, start the exe file, and follow the steps. So the unzip is just running, there's an exe file inside. We'll have a look at that as we go. Copy the file that's star.raucb using an SFTP tool. I'm going to be using WinSCP to the root directory of admin user, which is not in the normal user folder. It's in opt PLCnext. Open the shell using PuTTY or Terraterm or something like that. Again, I'll be linking through from WinSCP. Log in with a secure shell that has sudo rights, so we're going to be logging in as admin, the same as we used to go to the console a moment ago. Change into the directory for the PLCnext home folder, and then run sudo update AXC F 2152 to start the update. Then you just sit back and watch the show. So let's get started with that. I'm just going to move these instructions to one side of my screen. So here's WinSCP, and I've already got it configured for the PLCnext 192.168.1.10. This is just for future testing. I was playing around with the other one, and it's going to prompt me for the login credentials, so I'm just going to log in. And because it's first time I'm connecting this particular module, we'll just say update the information, and I have to change that. Sorry, bear with me. Just change this to say admin. The password is not valid there, so we'll save that. Allow it. Now we'll log in. And for admin, we got to put in the password again. Okay, so now we're logged in as admin, and you can see our default home directory for the admin user is the opt PLCnext user. We need to grab the file that we downloaded, which is this one here, firmware 1.1. We'll need to expand that and run this program here, which is just going to unzip it even further. So I guess they've zipped it up twice. So English, accept the agreement. Next. So it's going to put it into Documents, PC Works, Projects. Okay. Say finish. It's going to bring up change notes and things. Here we go. Now when you're extracting everything and a few of the other things for this program in PC Works, it actually puts it into the public folder, not the currently logged in user folder. You could probably override that. I just left it to do its default thing. So we go into PC Works, Projects, and here is the file that we just uploaded. No, sorry, expanded. So ASCX21 image base bundle 2152 RAUCB. So we've got to copy this to the home directory of the 2152. So here is our WinSCP session. This is the home folder. So we can just literally drag and drop that file straight into here, and WinSCP will copy it across for us. Physically see the, just takes a moment. Okay, now I just want to verify on the web page currently, which, as I said, we're showing 1.0.0. The user manager, we have the user admin that has the role of admin. We will be changing this later, but for now that's all we need. MAC address, hardware, version 2, firmware, yeah. So we want to verify that this all gets updated after we're done. So let's open up a WinSCP session to the controller. accept the fact that it's a new security. It automatically logged me in as admin because I told it to do that way back when I configured WinSCP. So here we go. Now the commands sudo update AXC F. Now if we look in here, we should see that file. There it is right here. So we will type in this command. Well, I'm just going to copy it from here and run that. It's going to ask me for the password again, so you just type in your admin password. If you've got a lot of these PLCs, obviously having different passwords in all of them will become a pain. You're going to have to write them down because there's no way you'll remember them. If you've only got one or two, then it's not so bad. Anyway, there we go. Let's just press enter. So it's stopping the PLCnext service so it can do the updates, and I'll fast forward this when it's done, but I won't stop recording. That way you'll see all the juicy details. Should probably take a few minutes according to what it says, and there we go, we're done. So now it's doing a reboot, so we'll lose this session in a moment. Okay, it's back, so let's just restart the session. So put our password in again. Okay. And as you notice, the file that we just installed has disappeared from the root folder as well. So that's, I guess, one way of verifying everything seemed to have worked okay. So if we go back to the home page of the website, we should see the updated information. Now this is still the old one. If I refresh, it should be asking me to log in again, which it is. Good. And we logged in, and there we go, our new hardware. Let me just zoom this up a little bit, make it easier to see. You can see there, firmware 1.1.023 now, so everything updated. General data is just the same, except for the new firmware version, and user manager is just the same as well. So perfect, we've now updated our firmware. Now another thing that I found with these, which needs to be done pretty much right away, is the date and time is not correct. And if you try and use things like OPC UA and other things that rely on certificates and things like that, it will fail miserably just because the times aren't synchronized. So don't ask me how I know. Well, you can. I did it, and it took me a little bit to figure out that, like, yes, certificates. So we will go back in here. Right now where I am is 4:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and this is basically telling me it's 2049 UTC, and I'm not in UTC, so the time is actually correct. So if I wanted to change the date and time, I would use something like this. So date-s, and we would obviously set this correctly. So it is the 5th of the 9th, so we'll set this to 05 September and 2018, and the time is 4:52, so 16:52. So that's all we need to do for that. That doesn't help us with the time zone, of course. Oh, I have to say sudo, of course, and password again, and there we go. So now I've set the time, but the time zone is still not correct. So for that, I have to copy a file into the time zone folder. Sorry, we have to copy it over and rename it for the time zone to take effect. So the file we need to copy is from the user share zone info etc, or depending on what the time zone is, folder, and we need to copy it into the local time. So the first thing you've got to figure out is what time zone am I in, so if or what file do I need. So if we go in to the folder, and let's go to the root, yep, and so what did I say? User share zone info. So user share zone info. Oops, at the top. And you can see here that we have Pacific, Europe, Australia, America, Africa. We also have a whole bunch of them already in at this folder level. So what I want is EST5 EDT. So it's Eastern Standard Time and Eastern Daylight Time. That's the folder, sorry, that's the file I need to copy to etc local time. And in etc local time, so we'll go to the root again, and we'll go to etc. Right, it's not a folder, it's a file that we actually want, and it'll be called literally local time. Yes, local time. So let's get that done. Yeah, because that is a link for not time zone but for local time. I think we're probably better off unlinking it and then relinking to a file that's from the shared folder, which will be a much neater way to do it and it's consistent of the way it's already done. So what's the command we need to use? Here we go. First things first, we will need to unlink. So sudo again, unlink etc local time. That's the one that's already there with the link. So we'll just hit enter, provide the password again. I know there are ways you can just bypass this, but we won't for now. So that's that done. No, it is not. Okay, so we need to be logged in as root by the look of it. Admin does not have the powers to mess with the time zone. So we'll skip to another part of what I was going to show you, and that is how to set up root, because you can't use it until you have given it a password. So the command to use to this is sudo passwd and then the username, so in this case root, and press enter. Put in your current user password, and now you give it a password for the root user. So that's that done. Re-enter it, and now we're done. So I'm going to exit this WinSCP session and I'm going to relog back in now as root. I know I could just, well, you know what, I'll just do SU for now. Alright, so I'm in root. So now I should be able to redo that command. Sudo unlink etc. Well, I don't need the sudo anymore because I'm root. I don't think I do anyway. Alright, so that's unlinked. Now I need to create a new link. In my case, this would be ln. Well, I've got still got the sudo in there again, haven't I? Old habits. So link ln -s user share local zone info est5 edt. This is for my case, East Coast Canada or Eastern Standard Time Canada, and we're linking it to a file called local time. So if we do that and press enter, that's that done. Right, so now if I do date again, of course I had my time set, and now that I've changed the time zone, it's compensating for that. So I need to change my time again. Of course, it's not in my history anymore because I just logged in as the root user now. So the command date-s and 19th of September 2018, time 1704 again. This time, hopefully, it will have stuck. Yep, 1704. That's my time right now, 5:04. And a date command on its own gives us Eastern Daylight Time. So now our time zone is set correctly as well, which is excellent. I think from an initial setup, that is pretty much everything that you need to do. So we've updated the firmware, we've set the time correctly, we've through necessity created the root user password so we can log in as root instead of admin. And I think that pretty much concludes what we need to do for that initial setup. So the next step will be getting started with some programming, I guess, because there's nothing else we need to do with the hardware right now, certainly not with the main controller. Before I go, while you're in WinSCP connected to this, if you want to change your host name your IP address and things like that, then I find you can do it from the command line, of course, but I find it's easier just to go into WinSCP and change it from there. Remember, you probably need to be the root user in order to do this. So if you browse to the etc folder from the root and you look at things like hostname, there it is, then you can see that AXC F 2152 is the default hostname. So I'm going to leave that alone for now, but you could just change it here and save the file back. If you wanted to change your network configuration, there should be, oh, etc, it's under network, and then interfaces. So if you edit this, you can see here that we have a static configuration. You can, and the DNS name servers are set up to, looks like the Google ones, which is perfectly fine. You could change this setup to DHCP, etc. if you wanted to from here. That way, if you've temporarily changed your local network just so that you can communicate with the PLC, you can change its default IP address and everything here, so that when you reboot it, then you can put your PC back to its normal configuration for your network as well. The other thing is, too, is if you have more than one 2152 that you're putting on your network and you're working on them simultaneously, you're going to need to change the address and probably the host name of the additional controllers, because otherwise they're going to conflict on the network. I'm just going to have one connected right now, so it's not an issue. I'm going to leave this with its default configuration. That's it for now. So if you like that, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, well then don't. And I will see you in the next video where we will go and look at running our first application.